Hi, my name's Kevin Hicks. Welcome to the History Scot. If I was to tell you that one of medieval history's greatest freedom fighters was a man who fought on regardless, who was never captured, never surrendered. His name was Owain Glyndŵr. And once you've heard his story, you'll wonder why hardly anybody outside of Wales has ever heard of him. And you know, I come from a family that's half Welsh, half English. And my Welsh ancestors, my grandfather particularly, used to tell me the stories of his beloved homeland. And one name that came up so much was this legend, this story of Owain Glyndŵr. But it's not a legend. It's actually true. So I'm going to tell you the story of the last Prince of Wales, Owain Glyndŵr. So, Owain Glyndŵr, born 1359 or maybe just before, at Sycharth in northeast Wales. It's actually close to the border of England. It's a marcher lordship, not far from Oswestry. But his lineage, it shows that he was the heir to two princely families, the Powys and the Deheubarth families. He was really Welsh nobility. Highly educated in London, trained as a lawyer, and had years of loyal military service. But he was passed over for a knighthood, never received one. He was regarded just as a minor Welsh lord. And it feels to me that at that time, Wales was tolerated, not respected. And more English people were actually settling in Wales, and they appeared to have more rights than the Welsh, the indigenous Welsh people themselves. And then when Henry IV usurped the crown from Richard II, who subsequently died, murdered if you like, Owain remained loyal to the crown. He was loyal to Henry IV. So it's later in the 1390s that a series of events would change the course of Welsh history forever. It's down to Owain's neighbour, Baron Grey of Ruthin. We'll call him Lord Grey. He'd seized control of some of Owain's land. Now, Owain actually petitioned the English government, but his letters were ignored. And then later, in 1400s, Lord Grey receives a commission of array which should have been passed on to Owain, ordering him to raise an army or raise troops for a Scottish campaign. It would appear that Lord Grey deliberately withheld this commission of array from Owain, who didn't respond to the king's orders. Although it's a breach of his feudal duty, it's regarded as a contempt for the king's orders. Couple this with Lord Grey spreading rumours about Owain in the court, saying he's a bit of a traitor. You see, Lord Grey had standing in the court of Henry IV, whereas Owain did not. This all reflected badly on Owain Glyndŵr. So when you see the way Owain had been treated, you can understand why he retreats to his home in Sycharth. He was obviously suffering from disappointment and bitterness, but something else kindled a flame within his heart. He could see how the Welsh people were being treated by their English overlords, indeed, how he had been treated himself. This was the time to throw off the yoke of the English oppressors in Wales. So it was on the 16th of September 1400 at a place called Glyndŵr, where Owain Glyndŵr proclaims himself Prince of Wales. Now he chose this out-of-the-way place because there was no English officials, no sheriff, no one to report back to the king about what was going on. And yet this whole business was witnessed by over 300 people. Of course, his own family was there, his in-laws, and many people had travelled from all over Wales to witness this important event. But the most important was Hywel Cyffin, Dean of St Asaph. That shows that the church was behind him. Then a strange character, really, Crach Finant, described as Owain's seer. In modern terms, that would be his spin doctor. Now, what follows will be over a decade of rebellion. But you must understand, from the very beginning, this was crusade, an anti-English crusade. The first target was the attack on Ruthin, Lord Grey's place. They burnt it to the ground, but that was not enough for these rebels now. They burnt other towns too: Denbigh, Rhuddlan, Flint, Oswestry, Welshpool. All of these were regarded as English towns in Wales, and Owain's supporters They struck like a whirlwind. Letters were sent to the king for help, but now what follows could have been resolved if the king had negotiated with Owain, but instead he responded with force and appointed Henry Hotspur to bring the country to order. It was on Good Friday in 1401 that Owain's men tricked their way into Conway Castle and they captured it. It was a daring attack, but in May they had to surrender the castle. Shortly afterwards, Henry Hotspur defeated the rebels in the Battle of Cadair Idris. This would be the final service from Hotspur to the king, but I'll explain about that later. Now I should explain this wasn't just a tin pot rebellion by Owain Glyndŵr. We know of this because of what's called a penal letter, which is housed in the National Archives in Paris. It's the only known impression of his handwriting, and it's got his great seal on it. So the plan, it includes an independent Wales with its own parliament, its own church, and 2 universities, one in the north, one in the south. Later on, the plan included a tripart indenture. Wales and England will be split 3 ways. And because Wales has got a lot of mountains and an awful lot of hills, I know that because I used to live there, it wasn't always the best farmland for crops. So it was suggested that parts of English Shropshire and Cheshire should be seceded to Wales to improve their agriculture. England will be divided into 2, north and south, between the English allies, the Percys in the north and the Mortimers in the south. To me, this is a great plan because it gives the north of England its own parliament. Now there's a thought. So, back to the rebellion. Do you know it was in June 1401 that Owain's forces scored their first great victory against an English army? It was in Paris, at Mynyd Hithgin. Owain's army divided into 2. He had a very highly mobile mounted section who could move around the battlefield, and his archers, obviously, they were used to great effect. In retaliation, Henry's army marched on Anglesey, and they attacked the Franciscan friars there and drove them away because these were supporters of Richard II. So Henry IV was actually settling an old score. Meanwhile, Owain's estate at Sycharth was forfeited and later would be destroyed. Owain tried to get support from Scotland and from Ireland, but unfortunately his messengers were intercepted and they were hanged without mercy. Do you know, between 1401 and 1402, the English Parliament enacted the Penal Laws against the Welsh. These were draconian measures. They were awful. Just a few samples here. A Welshman could not hold senior office. He could not carry arms or armour near the border with English. An Englishman married to a Welsh woman would be stripped of his civil rights and barred from holding senior office in Wales. That's me. I'm married to a Welsh woman. Finally, an Englishman could not be convicted by a Welsh jury or tried in a Welsh court unless it was overseen by an English official. These laws were designed to coerce the Welsh into submission, but instead they drove Welshmen into the arms of the rebellion. I've read that men sold their tools and farmers sold cows to buy weapons and armour, to fight alongside Owain Glyndŵr and fight for an independent Wales. Now, the same year as the penal laws were introduced, Owain captures his old adversary, Lord Grey, holds him to ransom, keeps him captive for a year. I wonder if he went down to the dungeons and taunted him a little bit. Eventually, King Henry pays a large ransom and Lord Grey is released. Now, in June 1402, Owain's forces defeat an English army led by Edmund Mortimer. It was the Battle of Bryn, Glas. Mortimer's captured. Owain offers to ransom him to the king. But in contrast to Lord Grey, King Henry refuses to pay a ransom. Was this pettiness or fear of a rival claim to the throne? Because the Mortimers had a stronger claim than King Henry himself to the crown of England. Now remember, I mentioned earlier Henry Hotspur, right? He was the brother-in-law to Edmund Mortimer. and he was owed an awful lot of money by the king for ransoms that had been paid but not passed on to him. Now, seeing his brother-in-law abandoned by the king, Henry withdraws his services, and he will later go against the king at the Battle of Shrewsbury. Now, let me tell you a little about the Battle of Bryn, Glas. Owain Glyndŵr positioned his troops at the top of a steep hill. Well, that wasn't all of his troops. He had foot soldiers and archers at the top of the hill, but the English had to advance up that hill. And they thought they were going to have an easy victory. But Owain, at the bottom of the hill, hidden from view, had some of his mounted men. They would now attack the English army as they were advancing up the top of the hill. And then, to the dismay of the English, Welsh bowmen who were employed by the English turned on their English counterparts and shot at them at point blank. This caused confusion and absolute chaos. As Owain's troops advanced from behind, the English were soundly defeated. From now on, though, Owain Glyndŵr would refuse to fight the English in pitched battles unless he was sure he could win. He used guerrilla tactics to wear down the English, but don't be underestimating Owain Glyndŵr. He could be as ruthless as any other medieval nobleman. He has burned towns, targeted English, Welsh gentry, destroyed their infrastructure, and destroyed their property deliberately. But you know, Owain Glyndŵr, this Prince of Wales, he must have been an incredibly charismatic man. He acted like a true statesman, held a parliament at Machynlleth during 1404. He wasn't just another rebel. This was a man who founded institutions for an independent Wales. Amazingly, he had support of Englishmen too, noblemen like Edmund Mortimer, who marries Owain's daughter, and then Hotspur, who supported him. That's why they had the tripartite agreement drawn up. Owain wrote to the King of France, King Charles VI, asking for aid, and that king sends him troops and supplies. He even gained naval support from Scotland and from Brittany. But it wasn't enough. Over the years, Henry IV had gained strength, and after his successful Battle of Shrewsbury, he can now turn his attention to Wales. He sends his son, the future Henry V, with an army into Wales with new tactics. Don't attack Owain. Don't follow Owain Glyndŵr. Attack his supporters, burn their farms, destroy their villages and towns, ruin their infrastructure, deny Owain their support. Eventually, Owain retreats into North Wales, into the mountains of Snowdonia, and he simply disappears. You know, this man fought the might of an English army for 10 years, for over 10 years. He was never captured, never surrendered, simply melted away. So why has the world never really heard of him? They've heard of William Wallace, Robert the Bruce, and Robin Hood. Well, they've all got Hollywood films about them, haven't they, those rebels? It seems that history remembers the winners and those who lose spectacularly. But Owain Glyndŵr did neither. He fought one of the greatest powers in Europe for over a decade. He imagined a completely different future for Wales and England, and then simply disappeared into history. 600 years later, his rebellion has never officially been concluded. We don't know what happened to him, where or how he died, or where he's even buried. Or is it a really closely guarded Welsh secret, lost to time? Shh. Diolch a hwylfaw. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video of mine. Do excuse my Welsh pronunciation. I have been coached a little by my wife. We tried our best. But if you did enjoy the video, like, share and subscribe. And if you'd like to support our channel further, why not have a look at joining our Patreon community? We have quite a bit of fun. But before I leave, a quick shout out to some of our Patreon members. So here we go. Joe Pearce, Michael D. Fitzel, and Daniel Waddington. Hey guys, thanks a million. Without your help, I wouldn't be able to make these films. So, bye for now.